third one, which expresses a proposition.
Whoa, we got to slow down here. You got to stop making these assumptions about what I've said, because I in no way said that Matt Dillahunty is an atheist. I said I asked him whether what his atheism is true.
Well, you just say his atheism. What the hell do you think?
Okay, he considers himself
describe himself as an atheist.
He considers himself an agnostic atheist, which I find to be a contradiction in terms, but that's a debate that needs to be had. Yeah, so atheism classically has been described as without knowledge of God's existence, or God knowing that God doesn't exist. It's an affirmative claim that God.
No, it's a belief.
Okay, look, it can be both. Okay, we got to stop the challenge.
I just sorted this out for you.
Hold on, time out. When people are using an independent expression for atheism, this is a general philosophic approach, but when they couple their atheism with the modifier agnostic, what they're saying is, insofar as knowledge, they lack knowledge, agnostic. Insofar as belief, they lack belief, right? So their lack of belief is predicated upon their lack of knowledge. That's why there's a distinction between agnostic atheism and Gnostic atheism. Gnostic atheism is the position that they know, and therefore that's why they lack belief.
I had this discussion before. I think it's inappropriate. People can just call themselves holding the position of non-belief, and that would be more appropriate.
Okay, so let's avoid the use of the term entirely, right? So when you asked Matt Dillahunty what you did, what did you mean when you used the word atheist?
I meant what I said.
No, I just asked you a direct, simple question. I'm not being confrontational.
I did attempt. Jesus Christ, I did attempt to explain that, right? So you just didn't understand me. So the question was, how does he know atheism is true? That was the question, and he responded with a series of non-answers, stammering around, basically talking about the evidential burden of theists, and talking about the fact that he remains complete diversionary tactics, being specific, being a
Ace, you're breaking up.
Ace, you said that you asked him how does he know atheism is true, right? So you just said, obviously I can't make any meaning of that other than you believe that he believes that atheism is true, and that he believes that he knows it's true, correct? Now, what is the meaning that you believe he's assigning to atheism, right? You presume it means he believes that no deities exist, or at least the God of classical theism doesn't exist, right?
Look, I don't know what the guy believes. I just know he considers himself an agnostic atheist. Look, I'm not going to even try to make sense of these guys. But look, bro, I know that you're saying that I'm implying that by the question. I get it. But I don't know what the fuck he considers himself, because atheists are typically confused about the terminology they use.
You could ask him.
I'm trying to work it. Yeah, I'm trying to work out the shit as well. And when I ask the question, they don't address it very succinctly.
No. You're asking a question which is assuming a meaning, right? That he's going to infuse, right? And he might not have the meaning. So why don't you just ask him, when you say you're an atheist, what do you mean? Why don't you just start with that?
They don't want to answer. They don't want to get down to the bottom of it, because they know they have an epistemic burden. They want to avoid that. They just want to attack theists without any type of without any type of construction of their own position. That's what it is, and as far as I can see.
I don't know what to say to you, because you said that I said, why don't you ask him to find out? And then you said they don't want to know this, that, and the other. But wouldn't you want to know? So if you're saying that they're not going to answer, so it's pointless. So then when you ask the question that you did, which used the term, how do you know he understood it in the way that you meant it, or that it even made sense to his meaning?
Look, this is a so-called professional debater that's been engaged in a multitude of debates. This is not some newcomer, right? People have asked him this question on his radio show. People have taken to task on this in debates. He's been very he just evades the question.
No, he doesn't.
And try to. Well, yes, well, in some
That's
occasions,
a lie.
That's a lie. Well, okay, that may be a lie in the sense that there have been recent events that he's been asked this question where he has addressed it. He has, cleaned it up a bit. But to my recollection and listening to him in a variety of settings, he has been evasive. In the setting in Olivia's room, where I actually confronted him on this, he's been evasive. So it's possible that, future debates, he's cleaned it up.
So, for one, Olivia's room was like years ago, Ace, like 5 fucking years ago.
What does that matter? What does that matter?
What do you mean, what does that matter? It's been half a decade since, right?
What's
so if you would shut the fuck up,
there's a
right?
statute of limitations.
Unselect your microphone, shut the fuck up. The reason why it's important, so back to the point, the reason why it's important to put out that it's been 5 years is in that 5 years, Matt has evolved his position, like all of us. All of us have learned from these well, not all of us, but most of us have learned from these conversations, right? And have taken that information and refined our points. So if you're going to use someone's position from 5 years ago and ignore everything that he has said since then, it leads to frustration. Right. And Matt has specifically spoken about this, and it does bring a lot of frustration in him that people don't appreciate the amount of time he's put into speaking and addressing these issues. Right. So it's important, Ace, whether you accept it or not, to accept that 5 years ago is a long time. Now, furthermore, this whole topic at this point is nonsense. Because we should always defer to the individual on their own individual perspectives and points, and not try to force on them our own preconceptions, right? So even if I'm saying I'm an atheist and I believe in God, you should take that to try to understand the message that I'm trying to say and not focus so much and drown the conversation down in the bickering of whether or not my phrase atheism is accurate or not, because there's a message to be had.
Sorry, did I hear correctly? You're an atheist, but you do believe in God. Is that what you said?
I think that's exactly what he meant, and that's what he said, right?
What?
Yeah, well, I mean, you guys are going to be welcome to watch the video later and play back what I said.
I didn't know we were being recorded. Jesus Christ.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, with this level of stupidity, you're damn right I'm recording, because this is the kind of shit I'm going to use to hold your people's feet to the fire.
So
you're going to be kind of shooting yourself in the foot. You sure you want to do that?
Well, I was just going to ask that. Well, I was going to make a statement, but that I think that you're an atheist in the sense then that you reject all religions.
I'm not an atheist at all. I don't call myself an atheist. For one, I was speaking in a broad general sense. Like, for example, here's an example, Hash. So you'll have to turn your mic off now. Okay. If I say I'm a carpenter, if you ask me, what do you do for a living? And I say, I'm a carpenter. And you go, okay, well, what houses have you built? And I say, well, I make pools, actually. Right? Am I saying I don't do anything? No. I'm saying I make pools. I'm just wrong on the word I'm using to say that I make pools. There is a message there. I'm a pool maker, right? I'm just wrong about the phrase that I'm using to describe my job title, right? And what's going on here is, instead of saying, okay, well, you make pools and you're a pool maker, so you should call yourself a pool maker, people are just getting pedantic and trolly on the fact that I'm using the wrong word to describe the job that I do. Where the real message is, the answer to your real question is, what do I do for a living? And I do. So yes, it's the case I'm wrong about calling myself a carpenter. True. But that's not where the conversation lies. The conversation lies in my pool making skills. And people like Ace, what they want to do is take their preconceptions of what atheism mean and necessarily apply that to an atheist regardless of what the atheist is trying to say. That creates an impasse, and that's intentional, right? It's intentional. Ace chooses to strawman his opponent rather than actually addressing the opponent, because Ace fears where that conversation is going to go.
In fairness, I give people a range of options logically based off definitions that have been established for quite some time. And when they're inconsistent with that, I have to ask them, okay, what exactly are you describing here? And it's actually worse than that, because I don't get an answer as you've given. You say you're agnostic, or theological non-cognitivist more specifically. In the case of Matt Dillahunty, he didn't say, well, I lack a belief in God, or he didn't say I disbelieve in God. He didn't even say that I know that God doesn't exist. He didn't affirm any of those positions. What he said was absolutely nothing. It was just a diversionary tactic that tried to call into question the theists in their ability to supply him evidence, which I found to be fallacious. What does somebody ability to provide you evidence have to do with your position? Rather odd, don't you think?
He's spoken at length about this, Ace. On multiple occasions, he's put out YouTube videos both on the atheist experience and his personal, I forget the name of his personal show or whatever you want to call it, where he just talks to an audience. He has spoken at length about his position. And I don't understand why you're burying your head in the sand to all that information and just being stuck on what he said 5 years ago in a chat room.
Well, I'll have to defer to this new information, because this isn't like I'm just talking about 5 years ago. I have watched recent debates with Jordan Peterson, with Matt Dillahunty, and he exhibit the same behavior. And this is a recent debate. So maybe there's some instance where he's very clear on the matter. Then, I'll defer to that if I come across it.
So let me try and find you the, I think it's just under Matt Dillahunty. If you YouTube Matt Dillahunty, he has a bunch of videos that start with the title Atheist Debates.
That's great. I appreciate you providing that information to me. I'll look into that to update my information. And I would actually implore you to look up the concept of God and what it means, because I know you have some difficulty in understanding that. There is a variety of that. If you just Google God ontology or God conceptual definition, you'll find some information on that. So you can update yourself as well.
What makes any particular definition that I'll come across an authority on the position of what God is?
Well, how it works is there's established definitions that have been around for quite some time. They have been developed and they're fleshed out as far as what you want to know. As far as them being authoritative, that would be irrelevant.
No, it's not.
What they mean. Learning the meaning of something and trying to get at what they're trying to say has nothing to do with authoritative.
I'm not asking you about the definitions, Ace. I'm asking you about the nature of the definition. What makes the definition correct versus incorrect?
What makes the definition correct versus incorrect? Well, it's just a matter of logic and internal consistency, and whether or not there's evidence for it or evidence against it. There's a variety.
So you're saying God is an abstraction? Shut up. I told you, if you give feedback, you have to shut up when someone's interrupting you. Now, I'm asking you the nature of this definition. There are multiple inconsistent definitions of God. Multiple, right? Like, hopefully you can acknowledge that if I was to take your Go Define God challenge, that I would find multiple different, independent, contradictory notions of God. Now, I'm asking you to help me filter through them, right? What happens if I Google God and I come up with Odin? Is that going to be helpful for understanding what you are saying when it comes to God?
There are consensus definitions that you can appeal to, and virtually every word that you can conceive of may have different private interpretations that you may find on the internet. That doesn't change the fact that there is consensus.
So it's an appeal to popularity?
Key down. I'm not done talking. It's not appeal to population.
So you're saying it's an appeal to popularity. When you say that there's a consensus in definitions, that's what you're saying. Go with the most popular.
If you're trying to understand what
Yeah,
people
you'll
mean
have
by
to repeat what you said because I muted you since you don't have the respect of wearing headphones and giving feedback.
All right, I'll be right back. Let me try to resolve that. That's a reasonable criticism.
So for everyone else, I don't want it to sound like I'm saying that a person's individual definition on a particular topic is irrelevant or useless or anything like that. It's perfectly fine. We're welcome to use our own jargon, our own vernacular. This is the evolution of language. I'm not concerned with that, though. What I'm concerned with is the proposition that there is this thing out there, right? And it's being referred to as God. And I would assert that if there is a thing out there, that thing has attributes, right? It has a set of attributes, or we can some way, somehow determine those characteristics or attributes and then build a definition based upon that. And this would highlight for me the difference between a concrete object and an abstract object. When it comes to the notion of an abstract object, it's not confined to observation, to consistency, external consistency, or anything like that. Abstract objects are, you could say in this context, required to be internally consistent, meaning that the definition of whatever this abstract object is must be consistent with the overall concept that you're trying to draw from this definition. That would just be internal consistency. So what a thing is, if that thing is an abstract object, must only be internally consistent. It doesn't necessarily have to have this external consistency. That would be the realm of concrete objects. If I say this coffee cup is holding molten lava right now, there would be a problem with that because the material that this coffee cup is made of is inconsistent with the proposition that it can hold lava, right? So I can't just say whatever I want to say about concrete objects, right? That wouldn't be a meaningful way to approach things. It would be much more meaningful to say there's this thing out there and then define it based on the characteristics that I can in some way observe, whether it be hearing, feeling, seeing, or any other method of detection, right? Because again, this thing is external to my mind. Now, what it seems to me Ace is saying when he is appealing to internal consistency is that there's this thing out there, and the only assessment he needs to make about it is what he thinks about it. And I challenge that notion. And anybody's welcome to pipe in and tell me how I'm wrong with this approach. What makes this approach invalid? Right? When I ask, based on what authority are you defining? And when I say authority, I'm just asking for something that takes me outside of your mind, right? That I don't have to depend solely on you and what you are telling me this thing is. So authority isn't very strict or anything like that. It's just a way that we can achieve a common ground beyond your own personal opinion on things. And I don't think Ace is capable of doing that. And I think Ace knows that he's incapable of doing this. I think all theists know that they're incapable of doing this.
Well, all it would mean to appeal to authority would be somebody that has a specific expertise in the field, and that we may be led to believe that this person knows what he or she is talking about. But it would be a fallacy if you're appealing to authority in the sense that you're saying that X is true because somebody says it or somebody believes it in the field. But if you're saying that it's more likely to be true because this person knows about it, then that would be perfectly sensible. But in the case of knowing what something means or knowing what something is, conceptually speaking, you can just appeal to a definition. And the reason why one would cite common usage is because,
hold on.
Right.
I'm not asking conceptually. I'm asking cognitively, right? Your concept isn't going to answer the question of cognition.
What problems are you having cognitively with God?
That there's no way for me to cognitively understand your concept of God. It's simply limited to what you tell me about it. But there's no experience, there's no sensation, there's nothing I can do to assess the validity of your claim beyond asking you questions about what you think.
Okay, let's assume for sake of argument what you're saying is correct, but you do realize that doesn't lower the probability of this being the case, right? Just because you can't experience it or be able to conceive of it doesn't somehow mean that I'm wrong in my belief. You agreed or no?
Well, no, because the only way that I could take what you're saying as true is to appeal to you as an authority, and you have not established your authority on being able to discuss what a thing is.
No, that's not the point that I'm making. I'm trying to see whether or not we have common ground. We're talking on the same wavelength. Even if I'm not able to satisfy your understanding, or you're not able to conceive of what I'm referring to, or you're not able to experience what I'm referring to, you do realize that that doesn't somehow mean that what I'm saying is false or what I'm saying is untrue, right?
What I'm saying to you, Ace, we seem to be talking. I agree we're talking past each other because you're not appreciating what I'm saying. Let's just say you, Ace, tell me God is blue, all right? And I accept that proposition. Let's just say, okay, for the sake of the argument, God is blue. The moment I go to tell anyone God is blue, the only thing I can do is appeal to you. And necessarily the objection to that statement is that I'm appealing to authority. You have not established your authority to tell anyone what the thing is. So the information that you're providing about the thing is useless because it can only take us down the road of an appeal to authority. Now, that's why I'm asking you, based on what authority are you saying God is blue? If you were to make that claim, God is blue. Because then when I go to repeat that information that you give me, people can't accuse me of the fallacy of appeal to authority.
Okay, so first and foremost, you know perfectly well appealing to authority would be fallacious. So naturally, I wouldn't do something like that. So it wouldn't make sense to say
that's not true.
That's not true. Okay, so I can provide a definition of exactly what that means if necessary, but
yeah, provide a definition for the fallacy of appeal to authority, and you will see that an appeal to authority is only valid if and only if the authority is not an actual authority. If they are an actual authority, it's not an appeal to authority logical fallacy.
If you're insisting that something is true, the conclusion of something is true because an expert said so, then that would be appeal to authority. It would be fallacious.
No, you're confused. Go read the do I need to post for you the definition of an appeal to authority? An appeal to authority is only established in that the person is not an authority.
I think the people I think would understand that an appeal to authorities is precisely what I insert and what I said. So I don't think there's really much to discuss about this. It's clear for all to see.
Sorry if I can interrupt. I mean, agnostic. So do you believe in God?
I don't know what you mean by that question.
No, but you stated it earlier. You say you're an atheist that believes in God.
Why are you trolling? Like, is this all I can expect from you insofar as how you contribute to the room is to troll me?
No, I'm not trolling at all. I'm just trying to work out that if you do, what kind of God you believe in. You know, if you don't, you don't.
Yeah, I'm just not even going to address you if you're just going to troll. So this is the first link that comes up on appeal to authority. Insisting that a claim is true simply because a valid authority or expert on the issue said it was true without any other supporting evidence offered. That is exactly what I'm saying. The authority, no, it's not. The authority needs to establish the authority. Once the authority has established their authority based on evidence, then their claims can be considered useful. That's why I'm asking you, Ace. You are going down the road of appeal to authority when you say, well, just go look for a definition. I'm not looking for a definition. I'm not looking for a supposed expert to tell me something is true. I'm asking you, how do we differentiate proper definitions of God versus improper definitions of God? Meaning, what evidence is there to support any particular definition of God?
Well, those are two separate things, and they don't entail one another. And what I'm trying to convey to you is that I wouldn't appeal to authority in the sense in which you use it, because it would be fallacious. There's no situation where I can, whether I'm an expert or not, can I say that something is true because I'm an expert, right? Something is true because there's evidence or reasons to believe that it's the case. Me being a scientist, my titles have nothing to do with that. But moreover, what I'm trying to convey to you, if you listen carefully, is that whether I can communicate to you my private experience or my beliefs or my knowledge is irrelevant to whether or not I have good reason to believe what I'm saying is true. Just because you can't conceive of it, just because you can't experience it, doesn't somehow lower the probability of it being true, as far as I'm concerned. So even if you're unable to comprehend the concept of God, that doesn't do anything to
You're cutting out.
that doesn't do anything to lower the probability of it being true or false. That's what you're failing to see.
So here's a different source, and this is from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Fundamentally, the fallacy involves accepting as evidence for a proposition the pronouncement of someone who is taken to be an authority but is not really an authority. This can happen when non-experts parade as experts in the field in which they have no special competence. When, for example, celebrities endorse commercial products or social movements. Similarly, when there is a controversy and authorities are divided, there is an error to base one's view on the authority of just some of them, right? So this is what I'm talking about, Ace. You can establish an authority on a particular point, on a particular concept, right? There are experts in the field, right? I think one of the most classic examples is doctors, right? You wouldn't go to a plumber, right, if you had an infection. You would go to an expert on infections, and that would be a doctor, right? I hope we can agree to that. And you wouldn't go to a doctor to snake out your toilet because you have a massive clog in it, right? That there is an expertise on the part of the plumber, right? So what I'm asking you to do, Ace, is demonstrate in some way your expertise so that when you say something about God, I can actually accept it. If you're just going to tell me God is whatever the fuck you want me to believe God is, that's useless information to me, because we're not talking about an abstraction, Ace. If we were talking about an abstraction, fine, then what you say is authoritative. But we're talking about an actual thing, a concrete object, Ace, and we establish an understanding of concrete things based on the concept of expertise or something relevant to that, some method of confirming claims made about the thing. You don't just get to say whatever you want to say about this thing that exists external to your mind. I'm sorry, that's an irrational approach to the nature of things, to the discussion of the nature of things.
Okay, yeah. So if somebody says that X is true because an expert said it's true, that would be fallacious, even if the expert said it. So that's point number one. But if you're
that's not what we're discussing.
I know, but I'm answering that, and then we're going to get on to what you're saying. Now, if you're suggesting that the probability of somebody knowing about a subject matter is increased given that they have studied it, then I would agree with you, right? We would have common ground. Now, to go on what you were talking
about.
Pause.
When you say studied it, must there be an it there to study?
Okay, so first of all, we can have. I don't accept you suggesting that it has to be a concrete object in order for us to.
It's not what I asked. Can you answer my question?
It depends on what you mean by is. So
I
it's
said
not
it. Must there be an it there in order to study it?
It depends on what you mean by it, but conceivably we can study anything.
Okay, let's appeal to the first law of logic and then answer the fucking question. Must there be an it there to study it?
I said it depends on what you mean by it.
No, it doesn't depend on anything, jackass. Right? The laws of logic say it doesn't depend on anything. If there's no it there, which law of logic is this appealing to? There's no it. What is that?
Okay, so I'm going to respond in a way in which I understand, to say that as long as it's intelligible and it's not contradictory, we can discuss it and study it.
That doesn't answer my question. My question is, based on what you said, you can go back and listen to the recording later. You said when you study it, and I'm saying, must there be an it in order to study? The answer is yes, Ace. That's the answer. The answer is yes. That's the answer you're avoiding right now.
As I said, it depends on what you mean by it. But
no, it doesn't depend.
Assuming that we're on the same page, then yes.
No, it doesn't depend on anything. There's no, it depends on what you mean by it. No, it doesn't. You're claiming
semantics
the word it. This isn't semantics, Ace. This is logic. You are saying, or you are predicating expertise upon studying it. And I'm saying, okay, let's hash that out. Let's hash that particular phrase out. Studying it. Must there be an it to study? The answer is yes. There has to be an it in order to study it. I mean, it would be a contradiction to say there's no it, but we're going to study it. That would be a logical contradiction. So obviously, Ace, there needs to be an it there in order to study it.
Well, I don't think it makes much sense to quibble about this. I already conceded, and provided that we're on the same page about it, then yes. And I take it means some object, some abstraction, some concept, some idea.
Or concrete object. Right. I would agree in this parsed off micro conversation we're having about studying it, that it can be either concrete or abstract. I agree. But what I'm saying is there must be an it there if you're studying it. This is getting ridiculous. Just agree and we can move on.
I already agreed.
Yes, but you left out concrete objects. You only wanted to talk about abstractions.
I said object. I don't think I need to say.
Yes, abstract objects.
Right, but typically when somebody says object, they're talking about some type of physical construct.
No, there are concrete objects and there are abstract objects. You didn't denote concrete at all in your statement, so I was clarifying to make sure that when we go forward from this conversation, it can refer to both concrete and abstract objects and not just abstracts. This is critical to where I'm going to take this conversation.
Nobody suggested that it couldn't, so for you to... I appreciate the clarification, but it wasn't needed.
Okay, now let's move forward. Is God, as you propose it, an abstraction or is it concrete?
Is God an abstraction or concrete? I would say that my conception of God is purely abstract.
Right, so God, as according to Ace, is merely a concept. It's not this thing that exists. It's just an idea in Ace's head.
Yeah, I'm not sure that something abstract wouldn't exist as far as being a part of reality if it doesn't meet the definition of, let's say, how we would typically define like physical objects being in space. I'm not sure.
If it exists external to your mind, then by definition it's a concrete object.
Yeah, but just because it's a concrete object and it's not abstract, that doesn't to my mind, it doesn't mean whether or not it exists. So
Ace.
it seems to me that existence, as far as you're concerned, has a very specific ontology.
Ace,
which
I'm not saying abstract objects don't exist. Abstract objects exist. Concrete objects exist. The difference between the two is a concrete object is a thing that exists external to our minds. There are things external to us. Abstract objects are mind dependent, right? They depend on mental processes for us to talk about them and stuff. It's not, you're not going to go out and observe a number, right? That's not what's going to happen. A number is not a concrete object. It's an abstract object. So we can talk about numbers' existence in the context of an abstract object, but it's understood to not be a real thing out there in the universe. And I'm now asking you, God, is it a real thing out there in the universe, or is it a real thing inside of our minds understood to be abstract objects?
Well, I would take anything which exists in our mind to be real. So I don't accept the idea, the distinction you seem to be implying.
That's not what I said.
Yeah. So even if I accept that it's inside my head, that still would not make it not real, as far as I'm concerned.
I didn't say that. Spider-Man is real, bro. Spider-Man is real. Right? Absolutely. Spider-Man is real. He's a real abstract object.
Pain, for example, isn't some external thing that exists out there in the world. It's an abstraction, in a sense.
And let's stick to the topic. You're getting too confusing when you're talking about pain, because there are apparent pathways.
But my point being is that I take it to be an existent reality which exists in the external
would you just
world.
answer the simple question that I'm asking you? Is God, as you are talking about it, an abstract object or a concrete object?
I already answered that.
I don't believe that you answered it coherently enough for us to move forward in the definition. So if you answered it, just provide the answer again.
We can just go back into the recording and see whether or not I answered that.
So you're too much of a chicken shit coward to just state whether it's an abstract object or a concrete object? Because I don't agree that you've answered the question.
Well, it's only one way to find out.
No, there's not. There's another way to find out, and that's for you to restate it if you think you ever stated it to begin with. Because you haven't. You've been talking around the issue. You've been commenting about it, but you haven't explicitly stated God is a concrete object. All right, I'll take your silence as meaning you're afraid to move forward with this conversation because you don't want to look like an idiot.
That's an appeal to silence. That's a fallacy.
Ace, that's why I said I'll take your silence, right? Meaning this is how I'm going to interpret it. I'm not saying it is the case, right? But if you're too much of a fucking chicken shit to answer a simple question directed at you, that makes you look like a coward. That's exactly what that does.
That's why I said it's a fallacy.
No, it's not a fallacy. It's just you being a chicken shit. That's what it is. Like literally anybody that is, dumb enough to sit here and listen to this video that's being made is going to be able to go back and say, yeah, Ace didn't actually explicitly answer the question, because Ace knows. Ace knows that the moment he says God is a concrete object, that agnostic one is right. So that leaves him with saying God is an abstract object. And the moment Ace says that God is an abstract object, that's going to mean agnostic one is right. That's why you're not answering the fucking question right now. That's why you're bitching and moaning, pissing and moaning, pretending this appeal to silence nonsense. Just answer the fucking question or concede, right? Because by your silence, Ace, you are conceding. The real sad thing is I have pwned Ace this way at least 100 times. I have shut Ace's bullshit train down on numerous occasions. And what does this individual do? Repeats the same shit over and over and over without having ever learned where I'm going to go, how I'm going to put his feet directly in the fire and show, him and everybody else who's listening, exactly how ignorant his position is. It literally is an appeal to his own authority. And what did he say? What did Ace say to begin with? That started this whole thing, that I can go out and I can just define God, right? I can go use Google and type in define God. It's that simple. God is whatever you read on fucking Google.
Yeah, if it was that obvious, it's like, why does every person on the planet disagree about it and go to war over it, and including other Christians that, disagree with each other?
Yeah, it's a good question. Snoogs, are you trying to talk?
I think you've got your mic muted.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, we can hear you now. And the cute thing is, Ace is a deist. He's not even like, if I was, let's do it together. Let's do this in real time. Let me Google God. So the definition Google provides is, oh my God, the first definition. In Christianity and other monotheistic religions, the creator and ruler of the universe and source of all moral authority, the supreme being. So clearly, Ace is a Christian. He said just go Google it, right? But let's be fair and go to the second definition. In certain other religions, a superhuman being or spirit worshipped as having power over nature or human fortunes, a deity. I mean, he said just go Google it. I did. Anything wrong with those two definitions that I just Googled, Ace?
I would say they should specify whether or not will is involved.
Yeah, I would say that Ace should do that, since Ace is a deist, right? Ace believes in an impersonal God, right? And Ace said, hey, just go Google the definition, right? Because it's just so useful. Just go Google the definition. See any problems, Ace? Huh? See any problems with just Googling it?
Being creator, then there's ruler. What's the difference? Right? There's a difference. What is it? Source
Deism.
of all moral authority. No, I'm just looking at the definition posed. That's all. And then what was the other bit at the end? Something about supreme being. Like, supreme in what ways?
Yeah. I mean, I took the Ace challenge. I just Googled it, and I got a monotheistic religion definition and in other religion definitions, but not a fucking thing about the deist God Ace actually believes in. And Ace, I guess, doesn't have a problem with this.
You can do that practically with every concept where you put it in Google and you're not satisfied with the definition.
Ace, are you satisfied with those definitions?
Wait a second. Maybe you need to go into a philosophy literature or something like this if you want.
So you're going to move the goalpost now?
No, I'm just saying, if you're complaining about the use of Google, maybe you need to go to...
No, Ace, I'm complaining about you. And you telling me that if I want to understand God, all I got to do is just go Google it. Well, I did that, Ace.
No,
do you have... I'm asking you a question, Ace. Ace, I'm asking you a question. After having just Googled it, do you have a problem with either two of these definitions provided?
Family resemblance, roughly speaking, no, actually. Because the way it works is, if you're going to look up a concept, and I'm a deist specifically, it's going to fall within that paradigm, right? It may not be precise, but it's close enough.
Which one is close enough? Which one of these two definitions is close enough to deism? The one that says in Christianity and other monotheistic religions?
Yes, theism is...
Deism's not a religion.
Wait a second. Technically speaking, deism would fall under theism because it's a God claim. It's about the existence of God.
I'm not disputing that.
Look up on Wikipedia family of resemblance. So you
can I can move the goalpost after we hash out the error of just Googling it like you told me to do earlier. Like, as you could see, Ace, if you were not a dishonest asshole right now, and I'm not saying you're always a dishonest asshole, but right now you're being a dishonest asshole, you can see clearly neither one of these definitions is consistent with deism. You're just a chicken shit, and you don't want to admit that.
I want to ask something. So, Ace, there's a difference between whether you say it's close enough versus we asking you whether you accept the definition. Those are different, right? One is saying, okay, it's close enough by some metric or something. The other one is saying, yes, I accept each one of them. And that's the second one is what's being asked now. Yeah, sure, there's always the possibility that when somebody says something, they can say, I don't have the same meaning as that. That's a problem. Sure, I agree with that. But all I'm saying is that definition is just so unspecified, right? When I look at it, I don't know what it's talking about. Now, you might agree with it, say supreme being. You might think, yeah, God is supreme in some way, and it might not need to be specified because it's just saying supreme in some way or ways, right? But would that be okay to you? Is that what your concept of God is?
Roughly speaking, it's accurate. But if you
no, you're doing it again.
Wait a second. And this is mostly going to agnostic. If you need more precision, there are scholarly philosophical papers that you can look at if you need that level.
Why don't you provide them?
Sure.
Wait a minute. No. You're being asked. Here's the definition, right? Creator and ruler of the universe. Do you agree with that specific alleged attribute? You say yes. That expresses my concept in part. That expresses an attribute, not roughly, right? Yes or no?
Well, my minimum understanding of God is how did I put it before? The ultimate foundation for reality, and that would be consistent.
I didn't ask you
what the theist is trying to say. That's how I would characterize it, and I think that's similar to what they're trying to say.
No, I'm not asking you whether it's similar. I'm asking you, when you think of God, somebody says God is the creator of the universe. Let's just take creator. We'll leave ruler out for a second. God is a creator of the universe. You say yes to that. Not whether it's similar to what you have in mind. Is that an attribute you would assign? Is that, this is going to sound torturous, but I'm just, is that a way of expressing an attribute? Something that you believe is an attribute? Yes or no?
I already said my characterization of how I take
no,
it.
Man.
I don't need you to reword it and try to lock me into something that I rather not.
I'm not trying to lock you in. I'm just trying to understand what your concept is. It's just hopeless.
I'm trying to lock Ace in. I'm not going to hide that. I am trying to lock Ace in on a definition that he accepts, not what other people accept, what Ace accepts. And I think plurality is raising an important issue here, Ace. When I provided the first two definitions for when I just typed into Google, define God, you're saying you roughly accept that. Well, I don't know what you do and what you don't accept, because when you express that you only roughly accept it, that means you don't accept certain things in that premise as well. And so we're asking you, or you're being asked, to differentiate what clauses in these definitions do you accept and which clauses in these definitions do you not accept. You are the only one on this planet that can differentiate that for us.
2 dice and a pencil are all you need. You are the hero, Ace. Listen, just to reiterate what Ignostic is saying, right? There's a difference between saying this is roughly right and saying, yeah, I accept this, or no, I don't, right? And I'm asking you, straightforward, do you accept that if somebody says God is the creator of the universe, that expresses an attribute of God that you believe in? Straightforward question, yes or no?
It depends on what they mean by creator of the universe, the semantics of that. But the reason I said it's similar, because
hang on a minute.
It arrives at a specific idea, and that is that
no, Ace. It matters what you mean.
No. Okay, but look, I know what I mean, and I know what.
Well, we don't. That's the problem.
That's fine. There's other.
You have to articulate that bit for us, Ace. Jesus Christ.
Well, I have already articulated on many occasions. I don't feel the need to do it now.
Okay. I thought you said that, you can always ask, what do you mean by this? What do you mean by that? For any definition, suggesting that that's something that we're doing that we shouldn't be doing. But now you're doing it to the word create, aren't you? So aren't you being inconsistent? But even ignore that point. That's a second, but it's just frustrating. I mean, can you just not say yes, and then we can then ask you what you mean by create? If you think there's different people use it in different ways that are slightly different, that's a secondary question. I'm just asking you, right? When you read that definition, according to what you assign the meaning of create to, would that phrase be an attribute that you would express? What I said earlier. It's yes or no. And if it's yes, then okay, what does create mean? We can ask that afterwards. Right? We'd have to have that sorted out first. And just to agnostic, yeah, I get what you mean by locking. I guess that's what I meant, right? I just want to know what the hell he's talking about. But I guess what I took it to mean is I'm not trying to trick Ace. I'm just trying to find out what the hell he means. Like, I'm not trying to corner him to kick his ass. I'm just trying to know what is he talking about.
Well, I would like to characterize it in the language that I use rather than trying to see whether or not I accept some language that you found on Google. I think it'd be more accurate for me to articulate it myself
Jesus
rather
Christ.
than trying to be held to some other construals. So I said that my notion of God is God is the ultimate ground of being.
Ace, please stop talking. I have from the beginning been asking you what you mean by God. You earlier deflected by saying I can just Google it, and I told you the futility of me doing that. Then when you bowed out of the conversation because you're a coward, I went and Googled it and brought those definitions to the room. And now you're complaining that we're not asking you what you mean and we're not concerned about what you mean. Ace, that was my concern from the beginning. So now that we've hashed that out and that's out of the way, and you could tell that it is more important to determine what Ace means by God, you could tell us what you mean by God, right? That way we can move forward and we don't have to do this fucking nonsense of complaining about complaining and meta debating.
Okay, so he said the ultimate ground of being. Okay, so does that mean you believe that God is a being such that everything ultimately depends on him and he doesn't depend on anything else? Is that what you mean by the ultimate ground of being? Yes or no? That's the only way I can understand it. There's another weird Paul Tillich way that I just don't understand. I've heard of it, I just don't get it. I don't know if you're going for that one or the one I just mentioned. Well,
it would be a foundationalist account of God in the sense
Jesus.
Okay, so what difficulty are you having now?
Yes, no, I don't know what you mean. I'm not sure. I don't understand. It would be a foundationalist account of God. That's the difficulty, right? I'm not even, restricting your options to yes or no. I'm giving you others, but you just, I don't know, man. It's just, this is why I get frustrated. The same kind of thing happens when I discuss climate change with you, right? This is why I sometimes say you're being evasive. I don't know if you're doing this deliberately or not. Right? If I'm being charitable, I'm not sure whether you're doing it deliberately or not, but it's frustrating.
Yeah, and regardless of whether it's deliberate or not, it's an element or a feature of our current conversation, right? Ace is just moving around all over the place. Ace doesn't want to be nailed down to any specific concepts. Ace, it's okay to be wrong, right? It's okay to go out on a ledge, define God in a particular way, hear rebuttals, and go, I see what you're saying. Let me modify my concept, right? You're allowed to modify your concepts, right? Just be honest that that's what you're doing. You're taking new information into consideration and then applying that to the original concept so that you can concentrate out of that a better, more cohesive and coherent concept of God, right? But all this wiggling around and not being clear and not answering specific questions like, for example, is the ground of all being a concrete object or an abstract object, which would be an important distinction for us moving forward, you don't even want to approach it. You don't even want to deal with questions like that. Like what's wrong with going down the road of saying, yes, God, in my deist perspective, the ground of all being is a concrete object for which I merely have faith and believe in. Like, what the fuck is wrong with that? Nothing. Absolutely nothing wrong. You can believe whatever the hell you want to believe, but have the balls to state your beliefs, if not to educate others, but to learn from your own mistakes. But if you're just going to be a chicken shit, every time a question like that is asked of you, you're never going to learn anything.
Yeah, I mean, I'm giving up here because it's the base brick wall. So yeah. I always know it gets reached. It's just a matter of when it gets reached.
Yeah, and it's a wall built from the bricks of Ace's own uncertainty. Right? Every time Ace runs into something he can't be certain on and doesn't want to go out on a ledge, he puts that into form of a brick and just starts building this fucking wall across his own brain. It's ridiculous.
So I'm actually suggesting a topic change for Ace to bring another topic up. I don't know why he's silent. Maybe he's gone and he could be he could be sulking. He could have gone off and done something. I don't know what he's doing.
Hey, do you guys remember just like an hour ago, if that, Ace was criticizing Matt Dillahunty for not expressing himself, for not articulating himself? Does anybody remember that? I remember.
Yeah.
I remember.
Good one, Shark.
Pepperidge Farm remembers.
So, Ace, would you like to discuss how people like Matt Dillahunty, who don't have the ability to articulate themselves, are chicken shit cowards?
I'm actually interested in what he thinks about AOC's Green New Deal and that thing that he did with fossil fuels and plastics and hydrocarbons and all that stuff. Fuck it.
I don't think Matt Dillahunty has any formal training of any sort. He's basically a radio personality. So for him to go up against some of the biggest minds in universities all around the world and debate these people and still stand up to them, I think he's anything but an idiot. I think that guy is really smart, and he's a Renaissance man because he can argue well on any topic.
I mean, who said he was an idiot in the cognitive sense? Except for Dirt, right? I might not agree with some of his stuff. I haven't looked into it. But yeah, I don't think he's cognitively an idiot. I don't know what measure you'd use. He's certainly self-taught. And you can do that. You can teach yourself anything, just about. I mean, within limits.
Yeah, I think he does a great job of it. And, doing research and keeping up with these people. Like I said, considering the people he was debating on fine-tuning, it's surprising that he actually came out on top when the people that he was debating were physicists and cosmologists.
Oh, really? What was
this? Is for Ace.
Is this an Ace meme, Ignostic?
I'm posting one right now.
I did actually think that Ace's meme, AOC meme, the video was pretty good, actually. I do think it was funny. I did.